This episode of Anti-Fiction contains descriptions of drug use and suicide. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Anti-Fiction. This is a weekly nonfiction podcast where each week a theme is chosen, and I, Christian Yates, along with my two guest hosts, bring a story to tell based on that theme. My guest hosts this week are musician and my brother, Mike Yates.
Hello.
And acquaintance, Nate Leukhardt.
Hello.
So, this week's theme is the music industry. So we've all brought stories tangentially related to that, I hope.
Yep, very tangentially.
Good. So the story that I chose was the sordid history of Motley Crue. I originally wanted to do just like one tour, but so much crazy shit happened with this band that I could not decide which specific tour was the craziest. So I just this is 9 years in the 30 some odd year history of Motley Crue. So here goes.
That explains why yours is the longest.
It is. It's 4 pages long. 1980. Mick Mars is playing in a band called Vendetta, and he meets Nikki Sixx at a liquor store that, from what I understand, Nikki was working at. Nikki comes to see Mick's band, and they drink together. And at the time, Nikki is playing in a band called London, who are quickly rising to the top of the LA club circuit. Tommy Lee is playing in a band called Sweet 19, who Nikki saw at Starwood, but Tommy then leaves to join the band Dealer, but he's often late or absent from rehearsals, and he once punched a hole in the wall of the practice room, so they kick him out.
Sounds fun to work with.
Absolutely. Just sounds like a real professional.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy Lee is the second most professional one in this band, I think.
God.
Which is a really sad fact.
I also want to point out, I don't condone the lifestyle that you're about to hear about. And I'll be honest, if you ask any of the 4 members of Motley Crue now,
They probably don't either.
They don't condone it either. So that's
I'm pretty
important.
sure Nikki Sixx wrote a book about not condoning that.
Correct, yeah. So some of my information does come from the Heroin Diaries, which I read when it came out.
He wrote a second
what a
one too,
name.
didn't he?
That I don't know about. I didn't read any of his stuff after the Heroin Diaries.
I could be wrong.
And then I read some of the information, at least for like specific dates and things. There's a website called Chronological Crew that just has year by year, date by date. Here's where they were in these cities and these dates on this tour, and it's all fucking crazy.
I'm kind of surprised that kind of site exists. That information still exists somewhere.
I'm not. The internet has something
well,
for
yeah.
everyone.
Obviously, the majority of that information could not have possibly come from the band themselves.
No, some of it did, because a lot of it's compiled through their book, The Dirt, which is their autobiography.
So they remember everything.
Damn.
Evidently.
That's what I would have
and
the
then
issue
interviews
believing.
with the the management and the
management
label.
I could believe remembering
right.
some of that. What I'm saying is like,
but we'll get into some of that.
Gotcha.
Some of it is ridiculous. Some of their history is ridiculous, but I didn't include it because there's just so much. Anyway, so Tommy is kicked out. He goes to join the band Dealer, he gets kicked out of Dealer. And then Nikki Sixx at this time decides he's going to start a new band. And he gets in touch with Tommy Lee, and they invite Mick Mars to audition after finding his classified ad that read, quote, "loud, rude, and aggressive guitarist available."
Well, with what they're used to working with, I mean, that sounds pretty reasonable.
Right?
That actually sounds like on the more responsible side.
Yeah.
Of things.
At least he knows his flaws.
Right. Yeah.
He's honest with himself.
Yeah.
And that's
self-aware.
Really the best quality a human being can have.
So currently the band's vocalist is, this is a quote from Chronological Crew, by the way, "some guy called Odin." But as time goes on, Nikki starts to dislike his vocal pitch, and he wears white gloves all the time. and the band finds that uncool, and then Odin refuses to take them off in order to record hand clapping at the end of a song, so he's fired.
Yeah, I feel like that would be an issue.
Right? A little muffled. Mick wants to get the singer from a band called Rock Candy, who turns out to be Tommy Lee's former high school classmate, Vince Neil. After some convincing, Vince joins the band, and they play their first gig on April 24th, 1981, and legend has it that someone in the crowd spits on Vince during their performance, and the band begins to physically fight audience members. All right, so this is now just the chronological, crazy bullshit history of Motley Crue. That's their origin story. Here is their series proper. June 19th, 1981, Vince scores cocaine from a drag queen, but it turns out it's baby powder, so he punches the drag queen in the face.
What a start.
The next day, they attend their first radio interview with black eyes and fat lips. September 9th, 1981, Nicky and Vince arrive drunk and early for a gig, and someone makes a crack at Nicky, so he smashes the guy's head into the bar, shattering glasses and drawing blood. Then Nicky goes upstairs and gets jerked off by a girl at the bar. The band goes to a party at the Hyatt House where Nicky starts having sex in a closet, and he invites Tommy and another partygoer to join in without her knowledge. Turns out that random partygoer, that was his virginity being taken. You're right. October 31st, 1981, Vince gets in a bar fight at the Rainbow Bar and Grill and is arrested for battery. November 10th, 1981, they release their first studio album, Too Fast for Love.
Well, that's also a perfect title, and they really only have one speed. Just go.
Right.
Like, don't stop.
Yep.
Don't take
We haven't
any
even
shit.
really gotten to the crazy stuff. I want you to know that. January 1982, Vince Neil is arrested for punching out a female patron at the Troubadour while wearing an official U.S. Marines uniform. Don't know where he got it.
Patriotic.
February 11th, 1982, Vince and Nicky get in a fight with some bikers. Two undercover cops show up, and one grabs Nicky's hand as he wields a chain that he was using as a belt, and he bites Nicky's hand to the bone. So Nicky hits the cop in the face with the chain, and the cop pulls out his gun to arrest him. They hit Nicky in the face with their clubs, breaking his cheekbone and giving him a black eye. Vince runs off, but the cops catch up to him and repeatedly kick him in the stomach and face. They threaten Nicky with 5 years in prison, but Nicky's girlfriend, Lita Ford, gives the cops $1,000 and they drop the charges.
Oh, of course. Oh.
That incident is later inspiration for their song Knock 'em Dead Kid. June 3rd, 1982, the entire band is arrested at Edmonton International Airport because Nicky insisted they wear their spiked stage wardrobe through customs, and being considered dangerous weapons, they were detained.
I don't see how that possibly went wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
When your clothes are weapons, you're going to get through.
When your clothes
you're
are
fine.
spiked,
Yeah.
there is literally no bad outcome to that.
For real. Police confiscate $2,000 worth of stage gear, Vince's carry-on bag, which is full of Playboys and Hustler magazines. And while in Edmonton, a fan throws a beer bottle at Nicky, which cuts open his hand, and he keeps playing while throwing blood onto the crowd. The next night...
What nice people.
Right? The
metal
next
as fuck.
night, a bomb threat is made against the band. Decades later, that was confirmed to be a PR stunt. Like an assistant of their manager called in the threat so it would make them look more badass.
And it worked.
Yeah. The hotel they stay in fines them for trashing the 8th floor, including Tommy Lee throwing a TV out of the window.
That one I've heard about.
The band was banned for life from Edmonton.
The entire city.
The entire city. May 29th, 1983, the band plays at a festival. Tommy passes out before going on stage and requires oxygen to assist him. After the show, Mick's girlfriend punches him in the face for no apparent reason. The festival attracts 130 arrests and one murder over a drug deal.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
June 1983, at a party at Roy Thomas Baker's house, Nicky does lines of coke off a grand piano. He and Tommy hang out naked in the hot tub with a couple of other partygoers. until Nicky decides that he wants to go visit his girlfriend. And at this time, Roy Thomas Baker is starting to shut down the party, and he's like, all right, nobody leaves, you're all too wasted to go. So Nicky's like, well, fuck that, I'm going to go hang out with my girlfriend. So he scales the outside wall, naked, drives off in his Porsche, naked, and he's chased by fans, and he's driving. He winds up hitting, I think it said 90 miles an hour, and then he wraps his car around a telephone pole. It's like
expected
sitting
outcome.
right. The pole is now sitting next to him in the passenger seat. He's taken to the hospital by a passing couple. July of 1983, that's when Nicky Sixx begins using heroin. That's going to become important.
All that stuff happened pre-heroin.
Yeah, this
Pre-heroin.
was before.
This was all
Gonna be
cocaine and
honest,
alcohol.
Motley Crue got into a lot more fights than I thought they did.
Yeah.
Like,
There's
a
more to
lot
come.
more fights. I just assumed this is going to be a long story about drugs and sex with random groupies.
Oh,
and
it's
stuff.
it's all of those
No,
things.
yeah, but like,
With fights in between.
yeah,
Yeah.
but now there's fights in between. So
They fought to get drugs to have
Yeah.
sex with groupies.
So you get your drama, you
yeah.
get your romance, and now you have your action.
Yeah.
It's a very well-rounded story.
So the band releases Shout at the Devil on September 26, 1983.
I feel like they would. Shout out the devil.
And then the next thing I have written down on here is January 28th, 1984. Tommy Lee finds out that his girlfriend posed for Penthouse, and he finds this out while looking at pictures of her on the cover of Penthouse at a magazine stand. And a fan makes a comment about it, and Tommy knocks him unconscious. February 1984, Motley and Ozzy are on tour. This is...
Uh-oh.
In Memphis, Ozzy, Tommy, and Vince are arrested for peeing on a police car after laying down in the middle of a freeway. Back at the hotel, Ozzy wipes feces all over the wall in Tommy's room, and Ozzy and Vince steal a car, then smash all the windows and gut the upholstery.
I'm just a very different person than these people.
Yes.
Because I would never want to touch any feces. Nonetheless, smear it on the walls of a hotel room.
You need to keep in mind that unless I tell you that they're sober, they're not.
Yeah, because honestly, it would take less time that way.
Right.
Because if you had to announce every time
Yeah.
that they were under the influence of something, that's all you'd be saying.
For real. July 4th, 1984, Nicky fires a skyrocket out of his garden, which sets a palm tree on fire, which then falls onto a 65 Mustang. He thinks this is hilarious. August 25th, 1984, backstage at a show in Stockholm, Sweden, Nicky lifts Eddie Van Halen's shirt and bites him on the stomach, and then Vince bites him on the hand. And then at the Ritz in Paris, Vince kicks and shatters the glass entrance door while trying to take a phone call. I don't know how he thought that was going to help him accomplish his goal of taking the phone call, but
I don't know. I truly don't understand these people this far. They don't seem like people. They're just animals.
September
Party
2nd,
animals.
Party animals. Take a ride on the wild side.
They have a song called that.
Oh, they will later, yeah, for sure.
That's what it was influenced by, obviously.
Right? All of their crazy shit. September 2nd, 1984, in Nuremberg, Motley Crue is playing with Van Halen. Afterward, they get high in Dio keyboardist Claude Schnell's room, and when Schnell leaves the room, they throw his beds, chairs, desk, TV, and dresser out the window.
See, this is the main problem. You don't leave them in the room with windows and furniture because they won't be. There's just
'Cause
everything's
one
going
will
out the
go
window.
through the other.
They did this many times. Like, this is the second time I've mentioned it, but I think I omitted some.
Well, you got to have a hobby.
It just lacks
And this
creativity
time
at
was
that point.
particularly interesting because everything landed on two Mercedes that were parked below.
Oh, that's so sad.
They vacate the room, and the police show up later at Schnell's door and kick Dio's band out, and they're banned for years. October 1984, on tour with Iron Maiden, the members of Iron Maiden prank Motley. They handcuff Vince to the stage so he can't sing, and they chant Alka-Seltzer into the PA during Motley Crue's cover of Helter Skelter. The crew then bring out a table and chairs during Iron Maiden's set. They bring them out on stage, sit down, and have a beer during their set. December 8th, 1984. This is the first, big, crazy, fucking ridiculous story. This is the first one.
We haven't had one yet.
Vince throws a barbecue at his house. Members of the band Hanoi Rocks party with them, and a few days into the party, after taking Quaaludes, Jack Daniels, and a mix of brandy and Kahlua, Mick walks out of the house and attempts to drown himself in the ocean. Vince later sees him washed up on the beach, but Mick just wants to be left alone. Vince and Hanoi Rocks drummer Nicholas Razzle Dingley go on a beer run, and on the way back, Vince loses control of the vehicle and collides into an oncoming vehicle, injuring himself, the other drivers, and killing Razzle. Vince's blood alcohol content at the time was 0.17, which was like double the legal limit. December 8th, ironically, was the first day of National Drunk Driving Awareness Week.
Isn't that also Pearl Harbor Day, or is that the 7th?
I think that's the 7th.
Okay,
I don't
so
know.
Pearl Harbor,
Listeners,
don't drunk
email
drive.
us and let us know if we got that date wrong.
Yeah.
I know it was in 1942, and I know it happened
41.
I don't
Pearl
know
Harbor
anything.
was 41.
What even is a world war?
There were two of them, so you have
This is
options
a nonfiction podcast, and I don't know anything about nonfiction.
about things that actually happened.
So at the same party, this is all the same party, Mick, thinking he has drowned himself, heads back into the house and walks into a glass door thinking he's a ghost. And he falls on his ass. So Vince is charged with vehicular manslaughter for that evening. Tommy runs down to the scene of the accident, and like the cops take him away. They release him on bail, but they do decide to press charges and charge him with vehicular manslaughter.
Rightly so. Yeah.
But the trial doesn't happen just yet, obviously, but it will come. So April 1985, Tommy flips his motorcycle 7 times on an LA freeway, but escapes with minor injuries.
Damn.
Right? 7 times.
How?
I don't know.
Oh, God.
I don't get it. They released the album Theater of Pain June 21st, 1985. September 20th, 1985, is Vince's court date. He is sentenced to 30 days in jail, 200 hours community service, and restitution of $2.6 million. Newspaper headlines read, "Drunk Killer Vince Neil sentenced to touring world with rock band," which he has bittersweet feelings about. In April of 1986, Nikki is now shooting up $1,000 worth of drugs every day, and his veins are starting to collapse. June 15th, 1986, Vince enters Gardena City Jail to fulfill his 30-day sentence, but his sentence is reduced to 18 days for good behavior. The moral of this story really is that if you are famous and rich,
You get to do whatever you
get
want.
to do whatever you
And
want.
manage to not do drugs while you're in prison.
And apparently survive
then
everything.
He
You're good.
got conjugal visits every day for the 18 days that he was in there.
Fucking rock and roll, am I right?
He still pretty much got to do whatever he wanted. Yeah. April 15th, 1987, Nicky hears voices and people moving in his house and fires his .357 Magnum through the door at them. And then he realizes it was his radio, so he shoots his speakers. Right.
How did he get a gun?
The
Just to
band-
be
Why?
sure it wasn't a transformer.
The band then releases the album Girls, Girls, Girls on May 14th, 1987. In June of 1987, the Girls Tour kicks off. Mick has become depressed and tired of the pain from his degenerative bone disease and seeks comfort in alcohol. He takes 6 shots of vodka and a can of Coke before going on stage each night.
Well, at
And
least he
then-
has a can of Coke to even it out.
While on stage, he drinks a glass of straight vodka, which the other guys think is water. Listeners, you can't see, but I'm doing air quotes. That's something he said in I think it was The Dirt. He was like, and then I would drink vodka on stage, but the other guys thought it was water. And then Tommy also related stories of that. And then we'd go on stage and Mick would drink his vodka that we thought was water. That's from the dirt. And so if you're interested in learning more about
I
Motley
think it would be
Crue
funny if
after this,
everyone went on stage drinking vodka, thinking everyone else thought it was water. And
Right? No, I'm just hydrating.
they wonder why they go through their vodka bottle so fast.
So that he drinks straight vodka from a glass on stage, and then after the show he drinks something he calls Mars Aid, which is a mix of tequila, orange juice, and grenadine.
Oh.
October
Sounds really
1987.
sugary.
It does. Doesn't it?
That's,
In October 1987, while in Canada, Nicky and Tommy shoot up cocaine and heroin, and when they run out, they shoot up Jack Daniels. Yep.
huh.
While
I've
in
heard of alcoholic enemas before. This is something different.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yep.
Huh.
I cannot imagine. While
You
in,
also hate needles, so
That's true. That's true. I'm petrified of needles, so I can't imagine it. In Winnipeg, Nicky douses a hotel room door with lighter fluid and lights it on fire, then knocks and runs away.
Why the fuck do they hate hotels so much?
So he thought that it was their tour manager, and he was pranking him, but it was not
With
their tour
setting
manager's,
his room on
right?
fire?
But it was not even his tour
Dude,
manager's
best prank ever.
door.
Maybe
best prank.
You
It's
just
gonna be
got
so
pranked.
funny.
You just
Maybe-
got Winston.
Who like seriously anticipates the room being set on fire? It'll be the best prank.
maybe he was hoping his manager would have to go out the window because he hates windows so much.
Right, that's true.
He's like, we didn't have a TV to throw through it, so we might
Yeah.
as well throw our tour manager through it.
It's important to me that you know that this next story involves something being thrown out a window.
It's their favorite pastime. It has
I've
to.
been waiting for this story the whole time.
November 20th, 1987, Tommy and Nicky cut a hotel bed in half with a knife and try to throw another out the window.
That sounds like such a laborious task.
Mick tries to jump out his hotel window. They pull their dicks out at a bar, pour Jack Daniels on their pubes, and light them on fire.
Sounds like the best idea.
Yep. That's all the same night.
That's something that everyone should do, I think.
December 11th, 1987, Vince downs a pitcher of kamikaze cocktail and flips a table over onto 4 Yakuza gangsters who pull out their guns on him. And then he's like, their security like pulls him from the club at that point. December 14th, 1987, while on a train after a show in Osaka, so they're on international tour in Japan, and they're headed back to Tokyo, and the band runs through the car, pouring Jack Daniels on passengers' heads, and they smear curry all over the walls of the train, and Nicky throws a bottle of Jack Daniels that ends up hitting a passenger, and it smashes and cuts the passenger's head open, and he's just like, just a random businessman. Like, he's just on this train on his commute, and then it happens that Motley Crue is in the same car as him.
Which is like the worst luck possible, apparently.
Absolutely.
You expect to get thrown out a window then.
December 22nd, 1987, Nicky parties with Slash from Guns N' Roses and Robin Crosby from Rat, and after partying at the Cat House, they go to Franklin Plaza and shoot up. Nicky overdoses, turning blue, and their dealer jumps out the hotel window shouting that he just killed Nicky Six. Paramedics arrive and begin resuscitating him, but Nicky is dead for several minutes. The paramedics use a double dose of adrenaline, which brings him back, and Nicky wakes up in the hospital hours later. So if you've read the Heroin Diaries, or if you've ever read any of, like, heard Nicky Six talk, really, because he talks about this all the time, he had an out-of-body experience where he felt like he couldn't move, and he was trying to see what the hell was going on, so he tried to sit up, thinking it was going to be, like, a laborious task for him to do that, but he found it surprisingly easy, and he just shot right up, but then he didn't stop, and he went through the roof of the ambulance, and he looked down and he saw himself on the gurney, and like saw the limo down the street with like their driver like calling people, letting them know that Nicky Six is dead, like this whole out-of-body experience, and then they hit him with that double dose of adrenaline, and it pulls him back into his body. That's how he tells it.
Damn.
And like the paramedic is like, nobody's gonna fucking die in my ambulance. Like, you get back in. So he wakes up in the hospital hours later, and he just walks out. like there's a cop trying to ask him questions, and he just pulls his IV tubes out and walks out of the hospital and gets a ride from some fans who heard that he was dead, and they're like really sad. And he talked about it years later, and he was like, really, that moment I realized that I do actually have humans that care about me, which I did not realize before. When he gets back home, he immediately shoots up again.
Well, it was kind of heartwarming until he immediately goes back to the drugs.
January of 1988. So at this point, they have found Nicky Six after learning that he was dead and then learning that he was not dead. And then so they go to Nicky's house and they find him having, like, the needle still in his arm. And at that point, the label and the manager of the band are like, that is fucking it. We've had it. You're all going to rehab. So January of 1988, they force the band into rehab. Tommy is the first one to go. But by the end of January of 1988, like, all of the members were in rehab, and Nicky was undergoing a methadone treatment. And Mick started going in the beginning, but stopped going, and then just used his willpower to get sober on his own.
Damn.
By 1989, the band was sober. And they released their first #1 album, Dr. Feelgood, on September 1st, 1989. They've each stated in interviews that the success of the album was due in no small part to their sobriety. Motley Crue released 4 more albums after Dr. Feelgood and continued touring with almost the same lineup for the rest of their career. The only times that that's not true was Vince Neil left the band from 1992 to 1996, and Tommy Lee left the band from 1999 to 2004. Their final show took place December 31st, 2015, and in order to truly make it final, the band was the first ever to sign a legally binding contract called a cessation of touring, which prevented them from touring beyond 2015 under the name Motley Crue.
Because that was going to be one of my questions, because that was their farewell tour still going on? Because that last tour was like 3 years long. So that was kind of a running joke at the time. Is that
it was
they just
actually,
never going to stay. They were the Brett Favre of the music industry.
It was
essentially.
a year and a half.
It was a year and a half.
It was
felt
a year and
longer
a half.
than a year and a half.
It started in July of 2014, and December 31st, 2015 was their last show ever. Vince Neil had wanted it to be, like, he wanted their last show ever to be the anniversary that the band started, which was January the something. It would have been their 35th anniversary of when the band, as that lineup, came into being.
Yeah.
So he wanted that to be their last show, but they wound up just saying, we're never doing touring beyond 2015. So that is the sordid history of Motley Crue. I left so many things out. So for real, like, it's definitely worth it to look into that band. If you're like me and you need a reason not to use heroin, read Nicky Six's Heroin Diaries, read The Dirt, read just anything about the band, and you'll never want to do drugs again.
They always have the numbers on exactly how much money they spent on drugs. I want to know exactly how much money they spent on windows and furniture.
Well, they didn't. It was the label.
You know, I don't think that I wrote down the amounts of the fines that they accrued, but like, it was a lot. It was a lot. They were constantly getting fined for basically any hotel that they stayed in.
I can't fathom living in a world where I could spend $1,000 on anything a day and just keep doing that for more than a day, honestly.
Right. Spend $1,000 a day for one day.
Yeah.
And then I'm done.
Yeah.
I can spend
then I'm out of money for the week.
All right. So that's my story. So I do believe, Nate, it is your turn. You're up, sir.
Yes, I chose the My Way killings.
Okay.
Which is really just sort of a vaguely connected group of murders, but they all have the running theme of Frank Sinatra's hit song My Way.
Okay.
In 1969, Frank Sinatra released his hit song My Way. It hit 27 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 and spent 75 weeks on the UK Top 40.
Shit.
A record that still stands today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good song.
It was written by Paul Anka, Anka. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce his name. I think it's Paul
Sure.
Anka.
Yeah, Anka.
It was set to the music of a French song called, I'm going to butcher this, Comme de Habitude.
No, I think
Habitude?
that's exactly
Comme
right.
de
If you're worried about butchering pronunciations, just wait till you get to my section.
Which roughly translates to as usual, performed by an artist known as Claude Francois. Paul Anka first heard this song while on holiday in southern France. Upon hearing it, he immediately flew to Paris in order to negotiate the rights to the song. In a 2007 interview, he stated, "I thought it was a shitty record, but there was just something to it."
The confidence.
Yeah.
It sucked, but I wanted it.
Yes, he just wanted to have it. Sometime later, Anka had dinner in Florida with Frank Sinatra, who at the dinner was, quote, with a couple of mob guys, during which Frank Sinatra stated, "I'm quitting the business. I'm sick of it. I'm getting the hell out." Upon hearing this, Anka didn't want him to leave the business,
Naturally.
so he thought he would write him a song. At 1 o'clock in the morning, I believe he started writing the song. He deliberately wrote the song to try and emulate Frank Sinatra's speech pattern as much as possible. He wanted it to be a song for him that he would just really easily pick up and he'd like. He finished the song at 5 o'clock in the morning and called Frank Sinatra saying, "I have a gift for you," saying, "I can write it, but I'm not the guy to sing it." The song breathed life into Frank Sinatra's career. The song became his signature song. However, according to his daughter Tina, he hated this song. He didn't like it at all. Quoted as saying, "He didn't like it."
That's a direct quote.
That's a direct quote
You
from his
can, in
daughter.
fact, quote me on that.
He didn't like it. She also stated that the song stuck to him and he couldn't get rid of it. He always thought the song was self-serving and self-indulgent. Now, fast forward to the year 2007, and a pattern starts arising, where in the Philippines, people singing karaoke were getting murdered by other bar patrons. So, half a dozen incidents in the Philippines connected with strenuous complaints over the singing of My Way. The Filipino newspapers named this phenomenon the My Way killings. On May 29th, 2007, a 29-year-old karaoke singer of My Way in a bar in San Mateo, Reyes, was shot dead as he sang the tune.
As he sang the tune?
Yes, by the bar security guard. The security guard was quoted as saying...
The security guard?
Yes.
Shot the guy singing Frank Sinatra.
The security guard was quoted as saying, "I didn't like the way he sang it."
Okay.
Yeah.
He quoted,
And he's in charge of security,
Yes.
so we respect your opinion, sir.
He shot him with
Especially
a
if you're
38
going
caliber
to kill
pistol.
people who you think suck.
Yeah.
So
I also learned that karaoke is like a huge thing in the Philippines. Like it's one of their favorite pastimes.
what do you know?
In the Philippines, people earn on average about $2 a day in 2007. So you could
Is that U.S. dollars or Philippine dollars?
U.S. dollars. So that roughly,
That's $0, basically.
yeah. So they could sing a song on karaoke for 5 pesos, which is 10 cents in U.S. currency. Some Filipinos, even those who love the song, actively avoided singing it in public and tried to steer away from the song as much as possible.
Why, yeah, if people were shooting people,
I think
I would too.
It was roughly around like 27 murders.
Like, fuck this, I'm gonna sing Danny California, it's not worth it.
It went as far as all bars in the Philippines started taking the song off of karaoke machines entirely and just trying to avoid it as much as they can. This also isn't just in the Philippines. There's actually a phenomenon known as karaoke rage that I didn't know about until I started reading about this.
What the fuck?
People just murder each other when they don't like people singing songs all the time. What is it? In Thailand, a U.S. citizen was stabbed to death by multiple bar patrons because he was singing My Way slightly off key.
Shit.
So, yeah, another patron was stabbed to death in England because he was hogging the mic. It's just people just kill each other for singing karaoke songs. I don't know why.
Frank
Oh my
Sinatra fans,
God.
man, they're
Yeah.
insane.
Right? Yeah, man.
That sucks because I like Frank Sinatra. Who am I going to kill now?
Right?
One other one I was able to find. A woman was also killed for singing Coldplay's Yellow. So there's a...
Well, that's understandable. Okay.
That was in Seattle.
You're not Chris Martin. You haven't earned what he's earned. Holy
So,
shit.
yeah.
Okay.
It's really hard to find any specific details on this one, but that was all I could find.
That's an interesting
That's
story.
nuts, though. So basically they figured that, like, the song is cursed or something
Yeah,
at this point.
most
like,
people.
oh, man,
Or
I'm going to
just so
sing my
classic
way, and
that-
everybody's got their broken bottles and, like, shotguns ready, and, like...
And then after they kill the person, like they like come out of like a few stages, like, so what happened, guys?
Right. Oh, man.
Oh, who killed this guy?
Yeah, whoever
It was
sang
me?
last
Yeah,
sucked. That's
there
all
was
I
a
remember.
recording theme throughout
That-
the production of the song that nobody really liked the song, but they just kept saying there was something to it. So a lot of people have taken that and run with it as like
the
there's
ghost
something
of
in the
Frank
song
Sinatra.
that makes people hate it and just angry.
It's actually the ghost of Frank Sinatra getting revenge after all these years.
That's exactly it. Frank Sinatra's like,
Who the fuck
I
is
hated
singing
this
that
song in
song?
life, and no one will enjoy it in my death.
Apparently, people enjoy it in their death all the time because it's also the top song played in funerals in England.
That is horribly ironic.
Yeah, it's odd. I don't get it. There's something about the song that just makes people want to die, apparently.
All right.
Especially if they like died in like horribly self-inflicted accidents and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, I fucking did it
My
my
way.
way.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna go out, this is how it's going down.
I'm going to go out how Frank Sinatra wanted me to
I
go.
wanted me to go out with his song.
Holy shit. All right. Well,
Interesting.
that was awesome. So, Mike,
Alrighty.
you have your story
I
ready
have
to
my
go?
story. First of all, we have to go back in time. Norway, circa 1984. Before we start getting into the meat and potatoes of this story and everything like that, I'm going to go over a little bit of a history lesson because my story is about basically the one band that was at the center of the more or less invention of the genre of black metal,
Okay.
which when a not metal loving person thinks metal, typically they think like what the Satan worshipping, violent, scary image looking people, which is just like then the music's just nothing but noise and screaming. Well,
Wait, is that not what metal is?
that's what black metal is.
Okay.
That is what black metal is. Disclaimer: I kind of like black metal.
Really?
There's a couple.
I did not know
There's
this
a couple
about
black
you.
metal. As a whole, black metal is not really my thing, but there are a couple bands within the genre that I really like. So like, I'll listen to like Dimmu Borgir.
That's like a
Carrick
name,
Angren's
though.
a really good band as well. Some people don't consider Cradle
Limp
of Filth.
Bizkit.
No.
No.
Living Color also not a black metal band.
Coldplay.
Yeah, there you go.
We're
Yeah.
getting farther away, guys. So, yeah, there's a couple bands in the genre that I like, but the thing with black metal is it's basically it's just everything's to the extreme. So I'll go over a slight, like a small definition of what black metal is, just in case anyone wants to get a mental picture without ever actually listening to a black metal song.
You're welcome,
Genuinely
listeners.
speaking, black metal is not for the faint of heart. If you are not prepared for black metal when you go into listening to it, you will not come out the other side the same
Yeah,
person.
man, I have listened to black metal that literally gave me heart palpitations.
Yeah, no, there are songs out there that's black metal. It's just like if you're not prepared, it changes you, and not always in the best way.
Sounds like I need to get into
Suddenly I
this.
want to start slaying ghosts.
This is straight from Wikipedia.
Excellent.
Black metal is a extreme subgenre of heavy metal music. Common traits include fast tempos, a shrieking vocal style, heavily distorted guitars played with tremolo picking, which is just really fast picking, a raw, lo-fi recording, unconventional song structures, and an emphasis on atmosphere. Artists often appear in corpse paint and adopt pseudonyms, which will be very important to the story I'm going to tell. Just a little bit more of a backstory to black metal. During the 1980s, several thrash and death metal bands formed a prototype for black metal. This so-called first wave, which is with air quotes, included bands such as Venom, Bathory, Merciful Fate, Hellhammer, and Celtic Frost. While none of those bands are actually black metal bands, they're the most commonly cited influences from bands that are actual black metal bands. So the second wave arose in the early 1990s, which is the actual when black metal actually became a thing, stemming mostly out of Norway, such as Mayhem, which is the band this story is about, Dark Throne, Burzum, also what this story is about, Immortal, Emperor, Satyricon, and Gorgoroth.
Those are all ridiculous band names.
Yeah, they have a
That
very
is a common trend with all things black metal.
imperial
essentially.
theme.
Anything that sounds evil is gonna be. It can be a black metal name, because then that was all just out of Norway. Because then this kind of also becomes relevant to the story a little bit when black metal started coming out of Sweden. There was a huge rivalry. So like Swedish black metal bands that spawned during the second wave would be Marduk, Niflheim, and Dark Funeral.
Isn't Marduk the frickin' villain from DuckTales Legend of the Lost Lamp or whatever it's called?
Well, if it is, it's probably spelled differently.
Yeah.
How is it spelled?
Marduk.
No, I'm pretty sure that's the villain from DuckTales.
Well, let's click on Okay, so here's a little bit of a side. Aside, we'll get into this. No, it is a Babylonian deity.
Okay, well, I'm pretty sure.
Their name is derived from
I'm going to
the
look it up
Babylonian
after
god
this, and I'm going to
Marduk,
mention it on the
patron
next
deity
episode.
of Babylon.
I'm going to mention it when I am right. I'm going to mention it on the next episode.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying what this is intended to be a reference to instead. So we get into the band Mayhem, debatably the first black metal band, the first actual black metal band, formed in 1984 in Oslo, Norway. As I go through these names of the members involved, I will probably try to pronounce their name once and then use the pseudonyms they used, because that will be way easier.
They can never be named Jorgen Jorgensen, can they?
No, they cannot. So we'll start with a biography of the band. They were founded in 1984 by guitarist, and this is where it's going to get hard, Øystein Arseth, whose original pseudonym was Destructor, but he later changed it to Euronymous, which is that's a demon name. That's also a common trend you'll find is whenever someone is taking a pseudonym for black metal, a very common thing is just to take a demon name and do that. That's not always the case, especially as we go through the other members of this band, but that is a good go-to if you want to be a black metal artist and don't have any other better ideas. So, founded by Øystein Arseth, Euronymous, henceforth. Bassist Jorn Stuberud, henceforth Necrobutcher.
Oh, Necrobutcher.
This is going to be hard because I have no idea how to pronounce his first name. Then drummer Kjetil Mannheim. It's Kjetil.
Sure.
That's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah.
Which he was not in the band long enough, apparently, to have a pseudonym. So we'll move on from there, because their actual drummer, the one that they know him from, is actually a very famous black metal musician.
Okay.
So they get their name Mayhem from the Venom song Mayhem with Mercy. Influenced by bands such as Venom, Motorhead, Black Sabbath, Slayer, Bathory, and Celtic Frost. They began their career covering songs by Black Sabbath, Venom, and Motorhead, which when you actually hear black metal, you will never think of Black Sabbath, ever.
No.
You will never think of Motorhead,
yeah.
ever. But if you boil it down, at least Black Sabbath, Motorhead, I don't see the jump, but with Black Sabbath, at least the subject matter was somewhat similar. Yeah. I can see that influencing
That's
black
fair.
metal. So they began their career covering those bands and later recorded their demo, Pure Fucking Armageddon.
That's the name of the
That is the name of
the
that
demo?
is the name of their first demo. After
That's
its release,
awesome.
Euronymous, who used to sing lead vocals along with Necrobutcher, recorded the first demo's studio rehearsals, recruited 2 session vocalists, Eric Norheim, pseudonym Messiah, and Sven Erik Christensen, pseudonym Maniac.
I feel like Messiah is kind of going against message here.
That's kind of the point. You'll
Is it?
find out as well.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because
But Messiah can just mean savior, though, and if he's the savior
Yeah.
against
but
Jesus,
that's also something,
it's just
especially
a
if you
different
listen to
kind of
Behemoth.
Messiah.
Anti-Messiah?
Because, especially if you listen to Behemoth, there's a lot of black metal bands that use a lot of religious imagery, but it's just in a different way. Ghost does it too.
Well, yeah,
where
yeah.
he's the Pope and
That's true.
stuff.
Yeah.
He's an undead Pope. That's what he is. So that's
I fucking love Ghost.
I've not ever heard of that. That's ridiculous.
Ghost is
Oh,
the
it's
band that
amazing.
if you just looked at them, you'd think they'd be black metal, but they are not black metal at all.
Yeah.
They use a lot of the same lyrical content, but
They're,
not
I think they're
musically
considered,
at all.
I could be wrong here. I'm not really in the know. Last I read, they're considered doom metal.
They have influences of doom metal. I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
As a whole, I wouldn't, because they have some songs that are a little fast to be considered doom metal. But
Yeah.
sure, without getting
Musician Michael Yates.
since this
Opinion.
since
They're
this is
fucking
more of a story about black metal, we will not dive into the numerous subgenres of metal that we could
Yeah.
be talking about. Instead, we'll focus on this one. So in 1986 and 87, respectively, Messiah. Oh, is it ice cream? Messiah
That's ice cream, yeah.
played vocals only for one show, which took place in April of 86 in Ski. And by the end of that year, he quit the band.
Couldn't handle
Later,
it.
well, I mean,
Metal.
he later then, apparently, because later then he formed a hardcore punk band instead of a black
yep.
metal band.
That's what he thought he was doing
called
with
Within Range, and another street punk band named Cockroach Clan. Anyways,
These names are brilliant.
so after that, with only Maniac as the vocalist, they recorded their EP Death Crush. They released it in 1987 under Euronymous' newly formed label Poser Corpse Music.
Jesus.
The initial 1,000 copy release of Death Crush quickly sold out. It was later reissued in 1993 by the newly named Deathlike Silence Productions as a joint venture between Euronymous' Oslo specialist record shop Helvete, which is, or however you pronounce it, this is a Norwegian word for hell.
It's short for Helvetica, I think.
So he literally names his record shop Hell.
Okay. Naturally.
Yeah.
When you name yourself after a demon.
So both of those vocalists, both Messiah and Maniac, were no longer in the band by 1988. This is when some of the crazy stuff starts to happen.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. None of that was the crazy
after
stuff.
two brief replacements, Maniac and Messiah's positions were filled by a Swedish man named Per Ingve Olin, whose moniker was Dead. And
Brilliant.
Local drummer Jan Axel Blomberg, whose moniker is Hellhammer. He is a very famous, he's a very well-known drummer.
Okay.
Very well. He can play incredibly fast. He's a very good drummer. So with Dead, the band's concerts started getting crazy. They became pretty notorious. For concerts, Dead went to great lengths to achieve the image and atmosphere he wished for. From the beginning of his career, he was known to wear what became known as corpse paint, which essentially is just you wear black and white makeup, but not in a Kiss way.
Okay, I was about to say that
Which
sounds like
which
Kiss.
just involved covering his face with black and white makeup. According to Necro Butcher, and this is a quote, it wasn't anything to do with Kiss and Alice Cooper, the way they use makeup. Dead actually wanted to look like a corpse. He didn't do it to look cool. Hellhammer claimed that Dead was the first guy to do it. He was the first guy to ever use corpse paint. So to complete the corpse-like image, Dead would bury his stage clothes and dig them up again later to wear the night of a concert. While performing, Dead would often cut himself with hunting knives and broken glass. Additionally,
My God.
the band often had pig or sheep heads impaled on stakes and planted at the front of their stage.
Actual
Pig and sheep heads impaled on stakes at the front of their stage.
I wasn't ready for
So-
this.
Oh, no,
So
neither was
I wasn't
I.
ready for this.
No,
story.
God.
that has eventually become not necessarily a common thing, but other bands since then have done it. And that's
they were the first.
They were the first one. They were. You'll find
They're
that
pioneers in a way.
they really were. Of the entire genre, Mayhem were the ones that started it all, essentially. And they were the ones that also really took it to the extremes. Because I mean, you can make a case for the actual invention of the genre to go to other bands, but they were definitely the ones that gave it its image and
Its image of butchered animals
and
dead
its,
people.
its image and its infamy. All of that came from Mayhem. So a later member of the band, who's let's see how you pronounce this, Stian Johansson, whose moniker was Occultus, said this about Dead. He said, Dead didn't see himself as human. He saw himself as a creature from another world. He said that he had visions that his blood had frozen in his veins, that he was actually dead. That was the reason that he took that name. He knew he would die. In 1990, the members of Mayhem moved into an old house.
You glossed over that real
Yeah.
fast. Hang on.
Hold on.
Hang on.
That quote will be very important shortly.
Yeah, but okay.
Can we go back
so,
to him believing he is a creature?
He did not believe he was a human. He did
So,
not
but
believe,
like he genuinely thought this, right?
he
so
believed
basically,
he believed he was already dead.
we we have a guy with like a severe, clearly like a severe mental health disorder.
I mean, who are we to say he wasn't dead?
I mean, well, the fact that he was
Well.
shambling around kind of makes me think. Okay.
No, yeah,
All right.
this
In
guy,
1990.
This guy, yeah.
Yeah.
So in 1990, the members of Mayhem moved to an old house in the forest near Oslo. Like, that's actually their address, the Woods. Which was used as a place for the band to rehearse. That's why they did it, essentially, is then they'd all be, like, I mean, me and my band are trying to do almost the same thing. Not in the woods, mind you, but, like,
Right.
all in one
In
place.
the
That way,
forest.
forest, woods, anyways. So basically, so that way they'd have a rehearsal space. They'd all live together. They wouldn't have to worry about waking people up in the middle of the night because they're playing extreme metal music in the forest.
And no one will find the bodies that way.
So that's when they began writing songs for their next album, De Mysteriis Dom Satanas, which is Latin, meaning about the mystery of the Lord Satan. Although the correct Latin would be De Mysteriis Domini Satanae. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing all that right because that's Latin. But yeah. So it was not even correct grammar for Latin, but they're also
Well, I
Norwegian.
mean, nobody was
So,
speaking
yeah.
it. So
It's hard to read with
The
dead
album
eyes.
cover, and this will be important, the album cover is a monochrome photo of the east side of Nidaros Cathedral in Trondheim, Norway. That will become important later. The bassist Necrobutcher said that after living together for a while, Dead and Euronymous got on each other's nerves a lot and weren't really friends at the end.
When Necro Butcher is the reasonable one, you need to kind of take stock of your friends.
Okay, so Hellhammer recalls that once Dead went outside to sleep in the middle of the woods because Euronymous was playing synth music that Dead hated. Now, aside from that being a not normal reaction, I would think, is like, yo, you're playing synth music, I'm going to go live in the woods now. Like, and not even in the house in the woods, like in the actual woods.
Just the woods.
I'm
yeah.
not sure if that's more shocking or if the fact that Euronymous was playing synth music to begin with. I don't know the guy.
Hey, he's
though, so
allowed to
it's
have
like-
other interests.
He's allowed to have other interests. We'll get to that.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
Euronymous then went outside after him and began shooting into the air with a shotgun.
How I call my friends.
Yeah. This name means nothing yet, but he will come up in the story later. He's also anyone who is into black metal knows this name. Anyone who is not into black metal but still into metal also knows this name. That's how infamous this dude is. His name is Varg Vikernes.
Yep, never heard of him.
Claims that Dead once
I'm not into
actually
metal
stabbed
enough.
Euronymous with a knife one time.
Oh,
He really likes knives. I mean,
Likes
he's cutting
knives?
himself,
Yeah.
so
He wants
it's good to
everyone
broaden
to
your
like him.
horizons.
Dead
Dead.
once stabbed Euronymous. Now, if you didn't think that was crazy,
thought it was a
Here-
little crazy.
here we go. On the 8th of April, 1991, Dead committed suicide in the house owned by the band. He was found by Euronymous with slits in his wrists and a shotgun wound to the head. Dead's suicide note nearby read, "Excuse all the blood, cheers," and included an apology for firing the weapon indoors. So, sorry about all the blood, cheers. Also sorry that I fired the gun inside. It was probably pretty loud. Instead of calling the police, though, and this is where the crazy transfers from one person to another, Euronymous went to a nearby store and bought a disposable camera to photograph the corpse, after rearranging some items. One of these photographs was later used as the cover of a bootleg live album, Dawn of the Black Hearts, for the band. So, after the suicide of their lead singer, their guitar player doesn't call the police, goes to the
pictures.
drugstore,
To be fair,
Rearranges the crime scene.
leaves the house first to go buy a camera, then comes back, rearranges some items. Well, whether he
That was
rearranged
his
them,
first thought, too. Like,
Whether or not he rearranged the
Dead
items
committed
before-
suicide.
I just
But
want
it
to know.
looks so just picturesque.
we will get to that.
I just want to know how that 911 call would have gone.
Well,
Hi,
it
this is
didn't go.
911.
It
So-
didn't, yeah.
It
Yeah,
didn't go.
but it would have to be. I'm calling because Dead's dead.
Right. My friend
Yeah,
Dead is dead.
yeah. My
I'm sure
friend's
he would
dead's
have called
dead.
him Purring They, whatever his last name was now.
Not in my. Not in
No
my
disrespect
rendition of
intended,
things.
obviously. So yeah, and then that photo
Oy.
was then later used as a cover for a live album of theirs. And if anyone wants to look at said cover,
I'm good.
it exists, and it is a thing that you can look at.
Okay.
The album is called Dawn of the Black Hearts. Veer beware. It's kind of a shitty picture, honestly, but you know what it is. It'd basically be if Courtney Love went and photographed Kurt Cobain after.
Well, you can't blame his photography skills. His mind was on
and
other
then
things
used
at the time.
it for a whole
album cover.
Yeah, a live one that was technically illegal. It was a bootleg album, not technically illegal. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so Necro Butcher recalls how Euronymous told him of the suicide. He said, he called me up the next day and said, Dead has done something really cool. He killed himself. I thought, have you lost it? What do you mean cool? He says, relax. I have photos of everything. I was in shock and grief. He was just thinking how to exploit it. So I told him, okay, don't even fucking call me before you destroy those pictures. So once again, the man named Necro Butcher, the voice of reason. He's the voice of reason in all of this. So afterwards, Euronymous basically used the suicide to craft the image that Mayhem is an evil band. Like, they're evil. They're all about the satanic imagery. Like, this is what we are. And he killed himself because black metal had become trendy and commercialized. Ugh. In time, rumors spread that Euronymous...
What year was this again? This was 1990?
Yeah, 1991.
1991. So he's afraid that black metal became too commercial and mainstream.
In about the 5 years since they invented the genre.
Right, but also, like, at the same time, they're not like Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Like, they're not Biz Markie. They're not, like...
But that's the thing about black metal is, like, black metal prides itself about remaining underground, essentially. They're very anti-commercialism.
You know,
they're
underground
very,
with the corpses.
There you go.
They're very anti-conform. They're very nonconformist. As long as you stick to the very strict rules that make you black metal. As long as you don't break those rules, then you're a nonconformist and you're good to go.
I feel like they should do some rebranding, and instead of being underground, they like to stay in the grave.
Well, that's why there's certain black metal purists. Solid joke. 10 out of 10 would use again. That's a lot of the reason, though, why there's bands that are technically black metal, like Cradle of Filth or Dimmu Borgir, that a lot of black metal purists don't like because of how popular they are, and that's their only thing. Like, same thing like with Behemoth. Those are the three most, like, I guess, globally famous black metal bands.
I never understand that mindset with bands.
Yeah,
where the successful ones are the worst ones.
Suck and stuff like that. No, yeah. Well, I mean, I like.
I mean, if nobody's listening to your music, then you don't have fans influencing the way that you write and record.
Yeah, that
so
point,
if everybody is like,
if you just write garbage,
then the music can be as pure as possible. It's exactly what you want it to be. But like, that's also implying that bands like black metal bands are writing music specifically to get famous. Like, that. If you were trying to write music specifically to get famous, black metal is not the genre you would pick.
Yeah.
Right.
So
you wouldn't invent a new genre.
Yeah.
That has no audience because you're the audience.
Now, in fairness, I think Cradle of Filth has progressively gotten less and less black metal influenced as the years have gone on.
I'll be honest with you.
I don't listen to a lot of Cradle of Filth, so I don't know.
By Cradle
You've probably
of Filth.
heard one or two. Probably one.
So they went from Cradle of Filth to Cradle of Trash.
Well, no, it's still Filth.
Okay.
But,
all right.
Anyways, so in time, back to the suicide of Dead, rumors spread that Euronymous had made a stew with bits of Dead's brain.
Oh, God.
Jesus.
And had made necklaces with bits of his skull. No. Okay. Now, the band later denied the former. Like, they're like, no.
Well, of course you deny that.
He did not make a stew, but he probably made necklaces with bits of skull. Which has also been, which he only gave them out to the musicians he deemed worthy. Which has been more or less confirmed by several members of other bands in the black metal scene.
We got this weird necklace in the mail.
Like a guy named Bard Ithun, whose moniker was Faust, from the band Metallion. I don't know exactly how. I don't listen. I'm not familiar with this band.
Metallion sounds pretty awesome.
Anyways, yeah. Now, the suicide of Dead affected Necro Butcher so much that he leaves the band, thinning the band's
there goes our
ranks
hero
down to 2. The group performed for a short time thereafter, with occultists joining the band to begin recording vocals and bass tracks in Mayhem's debut album. They have not actually put out an album before this point.
Oh my God!
De Mysteriis Dom Sathanas. However, this was short-lived. He left the band after receiving a death threat from Euronymous,
Who's in the band.
is now threatening his own members with death.
For what?
Are we sure Dead killed himself?
Right, it's starting to sound more and more like Euronymous was like, all right, we're just going to set the shotgun up like this and bam! And like, I believe that more than I believe Courtney Love pulled the trigger.
Yep. Yeah.
Then, jumping forward just a little bit, in July of 93, they released a live album called Live in Leipzig as a tribute to Dead. Rewinding a minute.
Because they're live and he's not.
Seems in bad taste. In
That was horribly bad taste. I apologize to any Dead listeners out there.
To any Dead people listening to us right now, we don't mean to offend your condition. Anyways, then rewinding back a minute, in late 1992, the recording of Mayhem's upcoming album resumed. Thus, Euronymous engaged 3 more session musicians, going back to the man named Varg Vikernes, who is in another band called Burzum, which is a very influential early black metal band that, if you are into black metal, odds are you very much enjoy this band as well. Who his stage name was Count Grishnak.
Okay.
Then a man named Snor W. Rutsch, whose moniker was Blackthorn, who handled bass and rhythm guitar. No, Varg was rhythm guitar, or was bass, and Blackthorn was guitar. And singer Attila Sihar, he's Hungarian. I don't like. We're just throwing more nationalities into this. I don't even know how to even begin pronouncing that last name. Due to complaints by his parents, Euronymous closed his scene focal point record shop, Helvete, claiming as reasons adverse media and police attention. It's like, you're getting into some weird shit, son. You need to. We can't be associated with this anymore.
I'm gonna need you to stop.
You're leaving a lot of our bodies around the house, son. We need you to.
So the album was recorded in the first half of '93, and then to coincide with the release of the album, and this is where a big rumor surrounding black metal started and was true. Euronymous and Vikernes, Count Grishnak, and I'll just continue to refer to him as either Varg or as Varg because he's more commonly known as that. His stage name as Count Grishnak was only with Mayhem, from what I understand, and in his own band he didn't use a moniker. Anyways, to coincide with the release of this album, Euronymous and Varg had conspired to blow up Nidaros Cathedral, which was on the cover of their first album. However, that plan was put to an end, delaying the album's release with the murder of Euronymous in August of 1993. On August 10th...
Tell me Dead did it.
I
Come
want
on.
so much for it to be Necro Butcher. Because, it would just be poetic justice. And not only that, but, he would finally live up to his name.
I feel like Euronymous really should have the name Necro Butcher because he butchered a dead person.
Right,
He is the Necro Butcher.
He's the Necro Butcher.
Yeah. Euronymous the Necro Butcher.
It was a
his friend
misnomer.
Necro Butcher.
This is just throw you off the scent. He was actually Necro Butcher the whole time.
Wow.
Anyways, on the 10th of August, 1993, Varg Vikernes murdered Euronymous. On that night, Vikernes and Rook, who was Faust from the other band, traveled from Bergen over 500 kilometers to Euronymous' apartment in Oslo. Upon their arrival, a confrontation began, which ended when Vikernes fatally stabbed Euronymous. His body was found outside the apartment with 23 cut wounds.
Jesus!
2 to the head, 5 to the neck, and 16 to the back.
But did he take
Vikernes
pictures?
Et tu, Brute?
Vikernes claims that Euronymous had plotted to torture him to death and videotape the event using a meeting about an unsigned contract as a pretext, because technically at that point, Varg was still just a session musician and he was basically lured. According to Varg, this is, since Euronymous is dead, he can't say, and even if he could, who knows if that would have been the truth either. So literally that is put to bed. That this unsigned contract may or may not have been about royalties or about actually joining the band in an official capacity, and then what would result from that on that.
Or being tortured to death, as contracts are sometimes.
But at that time, because Burzum Varg's other band had becoming more popular, and Euronymous had basically taken Varg under his wing and like showed him the ropes about black metal, but Burzum was becoming pretty popular in the black metal community. So more of a rivalry than a friendship started to spring up between the two. Because what Varg says is that on the night of the murder, Varg claims that he intended to hand Euronymous the signed contract and tell him to fuck off, but that Euronymous had attacked him first. Additionally, he defends that most of Euronymous' cut wounds were actually caused by broken glass and he had fallen on during the struggle. Vikernes was arrested within days, and a few months later he was sentenced to 21 years in prison for both the murder and the previous arson charges. Because in addition to the whole conspiracy, at least, to blow up Nidaros Cathedral, they had actually burned other churches to the ground.
So they were like, all right, we're going to burn a bunch of churches, and then the grand finale, we're blowing this one to the moon.
You know,
And then bam, album release party. It's like,
Right.
we're going to...
In the burning ashes
Yeah.
of this cathedral.
you know, having a hobby of throwing things out windows now doesn't seem so bad. It's really okay now.
See, this is why I was like, this story can't go first.
Yeah.
Like ruin the mood of the entire night. Okay, so we can get a little more jumping to a different page with a little bit more detail on this incident. I will read this excerpt from Varg's a biography of Varg. It's all in Wikipedia, so you can look this up if you want to.
Copy and paste.
This section, I'm not copy and pasting anything. I'm on Wikipedia. So anyway,
More effort than I'm doing.
in early 1993, this is an article actually it's on Varg's personal page, and it's actually entitled "The Murder of Oystein Aarseth, aka Euronymous." In early 1993, animosity arose between Euronymous and Vikernes, and between Euronymous and the entire Norwegian black metal scene. Because I guess, and this is just like conjecture on my own part, after the death of Dead, Euronymous went fucking nuts. By the sound of it.
Well, that's what happens when you find a suicide and then take pictures and parts of their skull.
Yeah, because before that, at least from what I've been able to research, he didn't do anything insane like this until Dead killed himself.
Other than all the dead animal heads.
That was what Dead brought to the band.
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah, that's what
that
Dead
was
brought
all
to the
that
band.
was.
Like they weren't using; they were just a regular band singing about Satan, with
As you do.
Yeah.
with shitty quality recordings, and that was the extent of it. Really,
Was Dead the one that believed he was dead?
Yes.
Okay, well, he got proved wrong.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
No, I would argue in the end he got proved right.
Oh, never mind.
So, anyways,
And then he comes back, and now his name is Twice Dead.
so now
Dead.
not only is there a big rivalry between Euronymous and Varg, but also the rest of the Norwegian black metal scene.
I wonder what it feels like to live knowing an entire culture hates you.
So anyways, what happens is on the night of the 10th of August, 1993, Varg and Blackthorn drive from Bergen to Euronymous' apartment. Upon their arrival, a confrontation begins, and Varg fatally stabs Euronymous. It's a rehash. 23 cut wounds, 2 to the head, 5 to the neck, and 16 to the back. At first, many blamed Swedish black metalers for the murder because there was already an inherent rival between Norwegian and Swedish black metal. It has been speculated that the murder was the result of a power struggle, a financial dispute over Burzum records, or an attempt at outdoing a recent stabbing in Lillehammer committed by Emperor drummer Faust.
Okay, just hearing where the stab wounds took place, I find it really hard to believe that Euronymous attacked first there, because if one of them gets a knife, Euronymous comes at you, there's going to get cut marks on his hands. He's got to get cut somewhere around the arms and hands before.
Varg had the knife. Euronymous didn't have the knife.
Yeah, but even if there was a struggle.
Euronymous just went in like bare-fisted, like, I'm going to punch you to death.
We will get to that.
Oh, God. Okay.
I know the wounds just don't match up to me. If the only way it makes sense is if the man with the knife stabbed him in the back first and then added all of the stab wounds. I just find it odd that he didn't have any defensive wounds on the front of him at all if a confrontation happened beforehand. Mm-hmm. Stabbing at the neck first is a weird way to go if you're in the middle of a fight.
I would say it's the smart way to go because it's more likely to end it quickly. Anyways, Varg denies all the rumors, stating that he killed Euronymous in self-defense. He says that Euronymous had plotted to stun him with an electroshock weapon, tie him up, and torture him to death while videotaping the event. Vikernes explains, if he was talking about it to everybody and anybody, I wouldn't have taken it seriously, but he had told just a select group of friends, and one of them told me. He said Euronymous planned to use a meeting about an unsigned contract to ambush him. Blackthorn stood outside smoking while Varg climbed the stairs to Euronymous' apartment on the 4th floor. Vikernes said that he met Euronymous at the door and handed him the contract, but when he stepped forward and confronted Euronymous, Euronymous panicked and kicked him in the chest. The two got into a struggle, and Vikernes stabbed Euronymous to death. Vikernes contends that most of Euronymous' cut wounds were caused by broken glass he had fallen on during the struggle. After the slaying, Vikernes and Blackthorn drove back to Bergen. On the way, they stopped at a lake where Vikernes disposed of his blood-stained clothes. Their self-defense story is doubted by Emperor Drummer Faust. According to Vikernes, Blackthorn only came along to show Euronymous some new guitar riffs and was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Blackthorn claims that in the summer of 1993, he was almost committed to a mental hospital, but fled to Bergen and stayed with Vikernes. He said Varg had planned to murder Euronymous and pressured him into coming along. Blackthorn said that the murder, I was neither for nor against it. I still don't give a shit about him. Vikernes called Blackthorn's claims a defense to make sure I couldn't blame him for the murder. He was arrested on the 19th of August, 9 days after the murder. Police found 100. This is where it gets pretty damning, honestly. The police found 150 kilograms of explosives and 3,000 rounds of ammunition in his home. According to Jeffrey Kaplan in his book Encyclopedia of White Power, because a lot of early black metalers were also accused of being neo-Nazis.
Mm-hmm. Naturally.
That looks like proof.
Vikernes intended to blow up Blitzhaus, the radical leftist and anarchist enclave in Oslo, a plan which was reportedly on the verge of execution. In an article originally published in 1999, Kevin Coogan also mentioned Vikernes' alleged intent to destroy an Oslo-based punk anti-fascist squat called Blitzhaus, and stated Vikernes may have felt he had no choice but to kill Euronymous before bombing Blitzhaus because the communist would almost certainly have opposed such an act. Vikernes denied these claims in a 2009 interview, stating, I was getting the explosives and ammunition in order to defend Norway if it were attacked any time. During the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union could have decided to attack us. We had no reason to trust either the government, the royal family, or the military because of what happened last time we were attacked. We are left to ourselves. He has since been released from prison.
Oh.
He got out in 2009, I believe. It's in here somewhere. Let me find it. When it was possible to be released on parole, serving 12 years of a 21-year sentence, but in 2002, before he became eligible, the Norwegian parliament had extended this to 14 years. In June 2006, after serving 12 years, Varg was denied parole by the Department of Criminal Justice for this reason. His lawyer, John Christian Elden, had complained that the policy change is a form of retroactive legislation. Article 96 of the Norwegian Constitution forbids any law being given retroactive force. Vikernes was denied parole again in 2008, although he was allowed to leave Tromsø prison for short periods to visit his family. His full sentence would run for another 7 years. In March 2009, however, his parole was announced after he had served 15 years of his 21-year sentence. On the 22nd of May 2009, he confirmed that he had been released from prison on probation.
Holy shit.
I'm pretty sure he's a YouTuber now.
Alright guys, I'm gonna tell you all about how to make your very own black metal quiche. I don't know what YouTubers do.
Yeah.
Like maybe he's just playing Battlefield or something, and it's like,
All right, guys, 1,000-degree knife through my
the
own
kill
arm.
was brutal, and I know about brutal because I killed a guy. That's
It was self-defense, though.
absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, that ended up turning into a little bit more of a piece on Varg Vikernes, but
It's
that's
it's all part of
essentially-
one sordid tale.
that's essentially where the story of Mayhem ends. At least the crazy shit ends, because so obviously after Euronymous was murdered, the band broke up.
Right. Well, yeah,
Because it was
naturally.
literally just one guy left.
You mean Necro Butcher didn't come back and save the band from extinction?
Not until 2004.
Oh God.
Naturally, he revived it.
I believe it was 2004.
We're going on a revival tour, guys.
So
No, see, because after Mayhem had more or less broken up, Hellhammer had gone on and done other things.
Right.
But the band Mayhem does exist now.
Just with a completely different lineup.
No, the Necro Butcher did come back to the band.
Okay.
Eventually, later.
well, he seems like a nice dude. The rest of them, though,
Level-headed.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Necro Butcher was the current band members include Necro Butcher on bass. He was originally he was an original member. He left in '91 after Dead's suicide.
Right.
Then the band breaks up for a period of time, and technically he's back in the band by 1995, and is currently still in the band. Same thing with Hellhammer.
Yeah, where was Hellhammer during all of this? He was really just in the background. watching
Hellhammer
this all
was
go
a pretty
down.
normal guy.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Hellhammer,
wasn't-
this was just a job for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a comparatively
He was a
normal guy.
contract guitarist. He just-
Yeah. I know he was at one point, he was in Dimmu Borgir. I don't know if he's still in Dimmu Borgir or not. But,
That's incredible.
Well, now I need to listen to black metal because that's just
Right.
It's an amazing beginning.
I am giving you guys a
it.
fair
I wanna
warning
understand
about what you are getting yourself into if you start listening to black metal. It is not for
You're
the faint
going
of
to
heart.
be burning down churches and killing your bandmates
Well,
before you know it.
So yeah, that's that band.
that's,
Listeners out there, if you also decide to get into black metal, be warned.
That'll do it for this episode.
Yeah, I think I had warned you prior to this that my story was insane, and it was insane in a very different way than yours was.
your exact words to me were, "My story is pretty metal."
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did say that. That is, I think those were my exact words. It's pretty fucking metal.
Pretty fucking metal indeed. Well, thanks guys for being on the show today. And listeners, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and Twitter at AntiFictionCast. If you have questions or ideas for topics or stories, you can always email them to us at antifictioncast@gmail.com. And make sure you tune in next Wednesday. We'll be back with more.